And welcome now, dear friends, to the Thursday edition of Fresh Bread. It is Thursday, June 8th, 2023. Never think of June 8th, of course, without thinking of the tornado that came through Topeka on this date back in 1966, 57 years ago. I was downstairs in the basement, surrounded by my family. They were hovering over me. We were praying, and the tornado went by us by about a half a block. The whole neighborhood, the whole area where we lived in central Topeka was completely destroyed. The park was completely destroyed, Central Park, and never forget that night. And certainly we think of those who lost their lives or who were injured, but it could have been so much worse. But I'll never forget June 8th, 1966. I can remember specific details about that day as if it happened yesterday, even to this day. So I was 8 years old at that time. So anyway, what a memory. And never forget it. So June 8th, 2023, here it is now. I'm out taking a walk, and I want to share with you why I'm doing what I'm doing. And first of all, I could say, well, I think God maybe was tapping me on the shoulder to do some ministry work many years ago in terms of maybe the church type ministry. And I just want to tell you, friends, that I believe I was in the ministry my whole life. I wasn't always active in the ministry like I could and should have been. But I always felt like God had put me in positions where I could at least be faithful to Him and to somehow convey His presence in my life. Now, did I always do it really well? No, not at all. There were a lot of ups and downs, a lot of peaks and valleys. There were times where it would have been hard to distinguish me from a non-Christian, I'm sure. And those are days that I look back on. I really don't even like to think about, honestly. But the reality is that I can't always go back and redo things that happened in the past. Like we were saying the other day, I can be really pretty hard on myself. I sometimes see things where I could have done differently. And like I said, they weren't even, I don't even think they necessarily qualify as a sin, I think they were a case where I zigged left when I should have zagged right, I just didn't do maybe what I should have done in certain instances, and maybe it was a bit caught off guard in certain cases. This happens fairly often, actually, not all the time, but it does happen to me. And I just pray God's going to keep me alert and ready, and not to ever just say, well, I'm in a safe place now and I don't have to do it. It seems like whenever I feel like I'm in a safe place and I let my guard down, that's when either I say something I shouldn't have said and now I've maybe offended somebody, I've got to apologize, or I've just made a decision that in and of itself was not sinful at all. But was it what God wanted me to do? So that's the question. So at any rate, we look back at our lives, and I believe God has brought us all to a certain place. And as a believer in Christ Jesus, we are all called to be ministers. And so I felt like that was always the goal, the desire. And I felt like that's what I was doing. But, all those years. And then just through connections, we talk about relationships really being the key to life. And then the relationships and the connections I had are really responsible for what I'm doing right now. And to a large degree, there's no way I look back, there's no way I could have orchestrated doing what I'm doing right now. And again, please hear me out. I am not saying, look how great I am. That's just not what I'm saying. Or look how I've come and done all this great stuff. I'm not saying that, please, so don't misunderstand me. I'm just saying this is how God brought me to the point that I'm at. I'm a broken and a desperately sinful person who needs the grace of God every single day. And I never want to go beyond that and thinking how great I am, because I'm not. And I'll be the first to admit it. And if you ever detect any pride in me, please let me know. Now I can be very definite on certain things that I think and believe that I believe God gave me, but that's what I believe He gave me. It's not about me trying to promote myself or anything like that. And I hope it never comes across that way. But anyhow, like I said, we're all ministers. Once we become a Christian, even as a child, we can be a minister, and we just start following the Lord. But it takes a long time for some of us to really grasp how this all works. And so, just to bring you a little bit more up to speed here in the last few years, it was through my friendship with Sean O'Trimble that I was able to come and speak a couple of times at the church. And as a result of that, Sean asked me if I would ever consider going into the ministry. And that was just a little bit over the top at that point. Really hadn't given much thought to it. But at that point, I did begin to open up to it. And sometimes I believe God's going to use another person in our life to kind of motivate us and move us into a certain area. And so I believe God definitely used Sean to do that. And so the process kind of got started, and I tried to discern what God wanted me to do. I wanted not to do what I wanted to do, but I wanted to do what He wanted me to do. And so the process kind of got started, and one door opened after another, and before long it was evident that I had a decision to make. And the decision was either to go forward with a possible call into the ministry, because I believe God called me, but I'm talking about a call from the denomination, the Great Plains Conference of the United Methodist Church. Were they going to, was I going to put myself into that position, having done what they required me to do to get to that point? And then I had two other choices. Either, let's say, no, that's absolutely not what God's telling me to do, so I'll bow out now. Or the third one was not yet. And so those were the three options. And I believe part of it is, I look at myself, I'm like, probably not yet. I didn't think the answer was ever no. But I remember I told my wife, I said, well, I got a decision to make after I'd gone to a candidate summit over in Manhattan. And it was either, yes, let's go forward with the process. Well, we could say not yet. That's option 2. Then option 3 was no. And I said, I think I'm in that not yet. My wife said, oh no, you're in the position. You need to go forward with it. And, really it was in large part because of her encouragement that I did keep going. And sometimes we need that other voice to tell us we can do something and we don't think we can do in and of ourselves. And so the doors kept opening, and one right after the other, and didn't take a real long time that I was blessed to be able to become the pastor at Kansas Avenue and Oakland United Methodist Churches in Topeka. That's a very, very, very short rendition of that story. But the last 2 days of Fresh Bread this week, I want to tell you why I'm doing what I'm doing and what I'm doing, and maybe how you can help, okay? So don't forget to come with us on our last 2 adventures this week in Fresh Bread on June the 8th, and then the weekend edition on June the 9th. Until then, have a great day. God bless you, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.